Good morning. It's almost Christmas. This video is for my knitting friends. I share a technique on how to avoid ladders when you're knitting with double pointed needles and knitting on the round. I am actually working on some mittens. I've been practicing my skill on knitting mittens. And when you do that, you want to try to avoid the ladders that can occur on the corner. And ladders occur because we tend to loosen up a little bit on those corners. So this is a technique on how to have a nice even set of stitches in your rows. So I say that I consider myself to be a beginner knitter. That's almost a mouthful. I'm always in the process of learning something new and developing my skills. And I've been working on mittens. Later on in the year, the new year, I'll be sharing about the number of mittens I've been working on. But in the meantime, here's a little technique. And if you're knitting over the holidays, happy knitting. When I knit using double pointed needles, and I'm working on the cuff of a mitten here, sometimes what happens in the corner pieces, you get a stretch in the wool, and so it's what we call a ladder in the wool. So to avoid that, what I do is I try to make sure that that top needle, the one that I'm actually working on, is on the top of all three needles so that the one point is close to the last needle. Pull my thread through, and sometimes I just give that a little bit of a snug, not catching the wool. Come on now. Okay, I just give it a little snug, and sometimes also with the second stitch, I give it a snug as well. Now in this case, I'm actually doing knit and purl because that's how I often do my cuffs. I have a marker on my round so that I know the beginning and end of my row, and then I just work my way through. I usually do two at the same time, so I have two sets going. I know some people use circular needles and they put both on the needles, and that requires using a magic loop technique, but I don't really enjoy that. And I think knitting should be about enjoying. So again, I'm showing here how I have that top piece, my working needle, on top of the other two needles. And then I just sort of grab it with my hand. Obviously, that's how we knit. And I slip my working needle through the loop, loop it around. In this case, it's a knit. You always begin a row with a knit and you end with a purl. And I just make sure that those two needles are close to each other and give it a little tug so that your wool is not loosened or stretched on the corner. And that's how I avoid ladders in my knitting when I'm working with double point needles. Here you can see that the corners are all nice and neat, the whole thing. You can't really see a division in the seam of the cuff. I don't know if you call it the seam of the cuff, but you understand what I'm trying to say. Every line looks right. There's no big splits, no gaping, stretching of the wool. Another technique I use are what I call pickup sticks. I just take the right number of double pointed needles, extra ones that I have, and I put them in a pocket. And as I complete one row, I remove a needle into the box or wherever, just in a separate place. So I'm just moving them over. So then when I've used up my needles, I've completed my number of rows. That way I can keep track. Now I know people will buy or use stitch counters. I have a little round one, a drum that you keep moving it, but I find that a bit cumbersome to use. There are other digital ones. I haven't bought or tried one out yet, but in the meantime, this method works for me. It could work for you too. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your new year And if you're new, think about subscribing.